Streaming live via the Internet. Welcome to ISP Radio, your weekly source for ISP-related news, events, and interviews with industry experts. If you deliver Internet via fiber optic, wireless, coax, or any other way, you're in the right place. Chat live with us weekly via ispradio.com every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. And now a brief word from our sponsors. Link Technologies, providing ISP consulting, support, and hardware for wireless ISPs. TowerCoverage.com, providing online RF coverage maps. Mimosa Networks, providing high-density, high-bandwidth radio products. Advanced LLC, providing retail and wholesale advanced communication services by matching providers with your bandwidth needs. And by Sitel, providing reliability in surge suppression. And now your host for ISP Radio, Steve Grabiel and Dennis Burgess.
Welcome to a special edition of ISP Radio. Today we have a special guest that's going to be joining us to talk about all things broadband in regards to the federal government and how we are regulated. And I'm Steve, broadcasting from Moriarty. Dennis is broadcasting from St. Louis. Dennis, you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Today we will have Ajit Pai, the commissioner for the FCC, to talk about what's going on with those folks in regards to broadband. And Dennis, you want to just talk about what we were talking before? Before Mr. Pai gets on board?
Yep. He is running a little bit late, so that's not a problem. We're going to give him a little bit of time. We're going to get him on the show here probably in the next few minutes as soon as he gives us a call in. For those of you that are listening live, please hit our chat window. And if you have any questions, go ahead and type those in. We want to try to get as many questions as possible. It's going to be a pretty short broadcast. The commissioner does not have a whole lot of time available, but we will try to get in there as quickly as possible. As far as the Title II stuff, I mean, we're still kind of up in the air. We don't have the rules. The rules haven't been made public. There has been a whole bunch of great information, and if you have not seen Commissioner Pai's public release, his press release, I think it was about a week ago, if you have not watched that, it is a great video. I think there's about 25-30 minutes of him speaking, and the rest are questions. Really great stuff on what the Title II and all that kind of good stuff does. So make sure you take a look at that. It's really, really great information. So with that, again, if you have those questions, go in there. Steve, I just need to hit up Lori here real quick. We were talking about, prior to starting the show, and while we wait, we were talking about Title II and net neutrality. And originally, the ideal was everybody wanted net neutrality. And I had a gentleman put net neutrality this way. Net neutrality is getting a free and open Internet. To regulate the Internet to become free and open, even though the Internet currently is free and open. But we're going to regulate it so that we can get it free and open. And I sat there and I go, that pretty much sums it up. There's definitely issues out there. We have things, I really think this fast lane, this is something that originally came up with the net neutrality, with the original FCC comments and action of trying to get net neutrality. One of the things was, hey, we want to allow a fast lane, and now everybody's anti-fast lane. I don't think there was a fast lane until they made one in many cases. Another thing we were talking about was people who use, you can use Microtech, you can use all kinds of different boxes, Procera and other brands, so I don't want to single anybody out. But, part of net neutrality, at least in its purest form, is to have all the bits the same. Everything is treated equal. And I know for a fact that many networks out there prioritize bits on a per-customer basis. And what they're really trying to do is they're trying to give the customer this beautiful broadband experience. So when you go to CNN.com, you go to the FCC webpage, you go to our sponsors' homepages, all those kinds of things, what happens is those bits go ahead of these long-standing downloads, things that most people will never know that it's slowed down a little bit, to ensure that you get the fastest speed possible on the what we would call interactive services. And what we will see in the net neutrality as again in its purest form is that you can't do that. You won't be able to do that. You have to say, if you get 25 meg that's what you get. We can't say which one's first, which one's second. That is the purest form of net neutrality that you can get, as well as hopefully we get rid of these fast lanes, things like that. So I know a lot of people think, and a lot of people are going around the rules going, Title II is for net neutrality. And I get a lot of people that are outside of our industry come in and say that. Even though that is kind of the case, it's a roundabout method to get there. The Title II regulation is really so that the FCC can regulate it and enforce and develop net neutrality rules. I personally think that's a little different. I mean, we don't want to get involved in what everybody thinks, but I know a lot of people that would say that instead of you taking the fast lane guys or the people that are changing the bits or changing how fast the bits flow to the end device and taking a sniper and shooting that one problem, what Title II really is about 6 nukes coming in to ensure that these problems don't happen instead of that surgical strike. Again, we won't know. We don't have any idea, and that's something that the commissioner has made it very clear, is that we don't have that information because this whole policy and this whole plan, this whole Title II stuff, completely up in the air, completely non-disclosed. Nobody knows anything besides the commissioners. And hopefully we'll get a couple questions in here today that will help us out in understanding, really, in the small business world, what impact is this going to have on us? Because I have a number of people out there telling me, hey, we are going to sit there and we're going to get net neutrality in Title II is going to come up. It's great, all fine and dandy. But they have 5 people. They have 2 installers, they have 1 owner, and 2 office ladies. And that's it. None of these people know anything about filing government forms, and they feel that, especially depending on certain reporting burdens that the Title II has currently, it would be a significant burden to do all that reporting. But we don't know. We don't know if that is going to actually be there. We don't know if all that information, all that reporting is going to be a requirement. We don't know anything. However, this is the big problem. Whenever we see Title II and Title II gets voted on and the vote comes down, basically the FCC is saying they have the authority to do so. And the Commissioner Pai had even said in that press release that the authority by the FCC to even set broadband pricing is in there. So does that mean they can? Yes. Does that mean they will? We don't know. But as with anything, once you start down that road, we go, here's Title II, here's the regulatory areas, everything is all said and done here, okay? Now we can regulate it if we want to. Now we may forbear or we may exclude different items, but guess what? We exclude a whole bunch of stuff at the beginning to get Title II passed. Now they can. Now as time goes on, guess what happens? Let's forget that forbearance. Hey, let's forget these things and let's start regulating this. Let's change this. Let's start doing that. Basically, you give them the authority and now they're going to start using it. So
it's a slippery slope.
Exactly. So we'll have to see how all that works as it continues on here. With that, I'm going to get back to Lori here, just trying to get the commissioner online here momentarily, hopefully.
We're still here. Sorry for the dead air.
Yeah. Well, you know how it is. This is a busy time for everybody at the FCC. They have the vote coming up. I think that's on the 26th, if I'm not mistaken. I believe so. And, I'm just going to make sure here. The vote is on the 26th, so it is next Thursday. Hopefully we get some more information. They're going to be voting and talking about actually 2 different items in that agenda. One is the new open internet rules. So most of that comes back to this Title II stuff. And number 2 is the preemption of the state laws prohibiting the municipally owned broadband networks. That's a whole nother issue. I mean, we've seen a lot of broadband networks completely fail. We see a lot of people sit there and build these networks, and then they don't have any money to operate it because it's a loss leader for them. They put in tons and tons, millions and millions of dollars to build fiber out, but it's cheaper to buy fiber from the local ILEC or the cable company than it is the municipal broadband project. So how does that actually help anybody? Now, I'm not sitting there saying that that's horrible. I'm not sitting there stating that it's not a good ideal. It's just, again, you have to be a little bit more in practice. Whenever I look at this, I see this a lot. We really see three different types of internet companies. We see the standard internet company, the small business that is very frugal with their money, that extends that dime and that dollar as far as they can all the time. Then we see these other types of businesses, and these other two types is basically government. Cost is not a factor usually. And then we see academia. And academia is the same thing. Cost is not really that big of a factor. So what we get is these different approaches. And what we find is in the academia world, whenever academia tries to translate over to business, a lot of times that does not work. It just simply, the money is not there, the funding is not there, the customers are not there for that. I had a municipal broadband project here in our county, and there was plenty of people at the state and county level wanting to get it done, and they were wanting to provide basically free or ultra low cost broadband access to students, and great. That's a great ideal. It's a great thing to do. There's not a problem, but whenever they're sitting there looking at 30,000 in AP. And all this kind of good stuff. And these guys have the people who are going to run it, these guys are professors. Do they know how to run it? Maybe. Have they ever done it actually in production? No. So what we're going to see is a massive learning curve. And their plan was, hey, we need $50,000 just to get started to do our testing so that we know what we'll cover. And we sat there and we go, why do you have to do testing? You should know this. If you're going to do it. Yeah, I mean, you should know it. I mean, you shouldn't be, you should hire someone that knows it. You should, hire someone with the experience and the knowledge to do that versus, hey, let's do a pilot program for $50,000 and spend $50,000 of taxpayer money just for you to learn what can and can't be done.
Yeah, this is tried and proven technology.
Yeah, I mean, why do you have to? Well, it's not that. It's not only that. It's more along the lines of, that's how they do that's how they do things. Hey, let's build it in a lab, get all the gear, build it in a lab, make sure it all works, make sure we know all the pitfalls, and then deploy it in a production environment. And most WISPs are not like that. We just, hey, let's toss up stuff and see what it works. Or as they become more experienced, we get the example of, hey, here is, I could put up this AP. I guarantee you within a pretty good accuracy, I'd say 95% accuracy, I can tell you exactly where we're going to cover, where we're not, and where I can roll a truck and where I wouldn't.
Right.
Very, very quickly. And that's even prior to doing a tower installation. But that wasn't what they had. They had all professors who have always worked inside that academia world. Again, perfectly fine. I'm sure they do a great room. They do great things with that, but just not. It doesn't translate well into the business world. And like I said, what I found, and we've seen this up in Canada too, where the municipalities in Canada built out extensive fiber networks, the power companies, etc. And what ends up happening is they turn that around, and the cost of bandwidth is actually more expensive than what local business is doing. And then they wonder why the municipal project doesn't go forward or doesn't get a big product offering. It's because they don't know they don't understand the financials that these people that we do to get broadband to these people. So it is what it is.
Have you seen in the real world a municipal project that sustains itself and provides something beneficial?
I do. I mean, I've seen. I have a number of customers with broadband connections, fiber connections to these municipal fiber networks. They definitely work. There's nothing wrong with them. They are built with high-quality hardware, high-quality gear. They usually, what usually happens, though, is they build out. The one project had like 60 people at one time. And then once all the build-out was done, basically everybody got let go besides like 4 people, and these were the admins. And then whenever they sat there for a year and they had a really hard time getting people to purchase this, because all they were selling is fiber. They were selling direct fiber access. It wasn't a residential package, let's say. You know what I'm saying? So it was not inexpensive, but all of a sudden they had a hard time. So they ended up dropping it all the way back down to a part-time guy, and that's all they have. So while the bandwidth is there and the fiber is there, they've had to cut back so much that the way I understand it, they're paying their bills per se. Banknotes, loans, whatever it may be, but they're paying the bills, but they're not really seeing that huge broadband deployment that they thought they would get out of it. Just simply because the cost, once they did the build out, the cost on a per month basis is just too high. One of the ones I did, or I worked with, they said they had a 5-year return on investment plan, and I go, I don't know how you can run hundreds of miles of fiber and have a 5-year return on investment.
Not on a residential priced circuit.
Well, regardless, the only time you would do that is whenever you need your long haul and you need that gig or 2 gig or 10 gig circuit, something that can grow with you, and hopefully it's 20 years. I hate to say it, but that's what most people. When I had another guy look at that, it was going to cost him $150,000. He can't eat $150,000 in the next 5 years. Period. So he would have to roll it out to almost 20 years before he said it comes down to a number that we can pay for now, and as we go forward, we could pay it back quicker, but to pay for it now, that's the only way that they can do it, is to finance it out that long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no one can puke that kind of money in the hopes of people signing on.
Well, some people can, but usually those are the guys that already have the broadband connection to begin with.
Yeah.
So, as I said, everyone, I know we're waiting for the commissioner to give us a call in here. If you have any questions, hit the chat window, type those in. I believe we got one here already, or 2. Just reading it here. And that's actually a really good question. The question that was posted on here: would Title II regulation pertain to only broadband providers by definition, by the new definition, the 25/3 or 25/4? I don't remember which one it is. Or would it be for everyone providing internet? I think I could answer that. I'm pretty sure it's for anybody providing the internet. Okay. However, if you do not provide what they consider broadband speed, then you would not be able to go after funding. And that's actually another question we're going to be asking is, if small business has to start collecting USF funds, can we get it? Can we apply for those funds? Because the way it's ruled right now is that we can't. We are outside the USF funding, so most ISPs or WISPs anyway would fall outside of that and go from there.
Yeah, that would be really one of the only benefits I see of going Title II is being able to go after that money. But like you mentioned earlier, that's a full-time employed position in a WISP anyways, going after that kind of money.
Yeah, well, I would agree that any type of funding like that, I would agree that any type of funding would be would have caveats and reporting aspects to it. And the difference being is that every operator would have the ability to do their due diligence and make a decision on their own to basically say, yes, we're going to get it, or no, we're not.
Mm-hmm. One of the questions, I don't want U.S. funding, I just want to be left alone. I'm with you. I don't see any positive benefit of small business being clumped into Title II, period. Yeah. And I don't want their money. I don't want to be beholden to the federal government. I just want to be left alone to provide what I can.
Yeah. No, I understand. You have to give me a second here, Steve. If you can take over a minute, I'm going to see if I can get the commissioner on the line here.
Sure.
All right, so I'm just going to mute myself and take some of those questions that are popping up there.
Yeah, one of the questions here that was posted, would Title II apply to clubs that provide Internet service as a perk for being a club member? I really don't think that would be part of it, because they would get the 25x3 at their club, and then how they break it down through whatever wireless router they have, I don't think that they could really be beholden to that, because they're not the ISP. The club would be paying some provider for that, and at the head end it'd be 25. Another question. That's a great question for Commissioner Pai. Does it mean all hotspot operators, hotels, etc., will need to conform to the new rules? I wouldn't think so, but who knows? We don't know what the rules are, and that's the thing that really stinks, is that we don't know what they're considering. It's all hush-hush, as I understand it. But, hopefully Commissioner Pai could answer some of these things, and please chime in with more questions, because we will ask all the questions that are posed at our live chat once we get Commissioner Pai online, and understand it's going to be about a 15 to 20 minute interview, because he's a very busy guy, and that's why when I reached out to him, he said they'd be interested in doing it, but on a Friday, which makes this a special show. So we just accommodated Commissioner Pai for whatever he needed to do to be able to tell us what he had to say. I reached out to him a week or so ago asking if he would be on the show, and they came back and said sure. So I really appreciate the fact that he was going to be on the show, because of what he said publicly and what Dennis mentioned about that YouTube video about this being kind of bucking the Commissioner head Wheeler, saying that this includes price control, and I don't know if price control is really where I want to go, or where any of you guys out there want to go. So someone says here that we've got his Twitter feed, and he uses Twitter pretty heavily. Well, that's pretty good. Do I need a federal document if I ask him a question on Twitter? Well, that may be the case. I don't know. I think he's pretty amicable to our questions. He did show up at Wispalooza and gave us a great speech. He's a terrific speaker, and he's very pro-WISP, if you will. He knows the industry, and I think he's one of the commissioners that is sticking up for us guys, the small business people, trying to make a living off of doing this. Even though it's not a big living, we're making a little bit. But as I understand it, at WISP America, we're having another commissioner give a speech at the WISP America show coming up next week, and it'll be interesting to see what he has to say, because I believe that the ruling, like Dennis said, will be out on the 26th.
All right.
And that's in the middle of WISP America. So any luck there, Dennis?
Yeah, we're going to try to bring them in. Apparently, they are having some particular issues, so we're going to see if we can bring them in. Steve, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know if you will be able to hear him. So you may need to grab another headset and just listen in if you can.
That's fine.
Because we're going to have to bring them in on a phone line.
Or the text from everyone else.
Yep. So let's see if we can bring them in here. Hey, Lori, are you there?
I'm here.
Excellent. If you want to transfer him on over.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks a lot. Steve, can you hear her?
Yes, I heard her.
Oh, cool. I didn't think it would work.
Your wisdom,
Hi, this is the G.
Dennis.
Commissioner, are you there?
Hey, I am. I'm so sorry. Oh, my gosh. This has been pandemonium this afternoon, all because of... Yeah, anyway, sorry about that.
If that's the worst problem we have all day today and all week, then we're doing great.
Well, you're very kind. Thanks for understanding. And again, I really apologize. I just can't stand being off schedule, and it's all my fault. So sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Well, Commissioner, I wanted to welcome you. My name's Dennis. I don't know. We didn't get an intro earlier. We also have Steve on the line here, and of course, we are live on ISP Radio. We have a couple really great questions for you, and I wanted to thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your day to come and listen to us and talk to us and answer a couple questions.
My pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. So we're just going to start, since we have a limited amount of time, and I know you've ran over a little bit, so maybe we can help you get back on schedule. One of the big questions that a lot of our listeners and a lot of my customers have is this proposed rulemaking is obviously all up in the air. It's not public, so nobody knows anything. What we're really concerned with is just about 2 or 3 different things. One of the big ones is based on the proposed rules, especially small businesses. So people, let's say a business is under 20 employees. Are we going to have a big burden in reporting and things like that as this progresses?
Well, I think part of the problem is that you don't know what rules are going to apply, and especially when it comes to WISPs. I mean, you guys are the folks who are providing the competitive alternatives without the big capital expenditure budgets and operational budgets that some of the bigger ISPs have. And that's part of the reason why I've been so outspoken about making this plan public, so that WISPs in particular can figure out exactly how big an effect Title II will have on their businesses. And I think that if you look at the full panoply of regulations that's in this document, everything from the ex-post rate regulation through litigation to the increase in broadband taxes through universal service fund assessments, you're looking at a situation where your folks are going to have to think long and hard about investing further in the network and hopefully even staying in the business.
We get a lot of people that are really concerned and do not know if they're going to put a whole bunch more capital back in the business until all this goes down. And I also expect that we're going to see a lot of other things that occur after the fact. So it's not going to be like all of a sudden a vote and then we're going to have all these rules and regulations. It's going to take a little while for all that to get sorted out, I'm sure.
I think so. After the vote, it'll take us some time to release the order, and then once it gets published in the Federal Register, I'm pretty sure a number of people are going to challenge it in court, and that process could take a couple of years to resolve itself, judging from recent experience. So, February 26th is not the end of the road for this issue.
Sure. Let me ask this again. I know you can't probably go into a whole bunch of detail. Another thing that people are worried about is having to collect USF or Universal Service Funds. While I personally don't have a big deal with it, but a lot of people are worried that, hey, they're going to be forced to collect it, but then they can't really apply for it either, if they so choose. Do you know? Can you speak to that?
I think that's a concern that a lot of WISPs have made clear to us, that look, it's not going to be easy to collect these funds, and additionally, to the extent that we don't rely on these federal subsidies to build out, it's not exactly the fairest thing in the world. And that's yet one more reason why I think we shouldn't go down this road of reclassifying broadband internet access as just like telephone service. It's not.
Gotcha. How about this one? Let's flip the subject of what good we can get of it. How will Title II and this regulation help us secure for things like the right-of-ways for fiber build-outs, as well as maybe pole access?
So one of the things the FCC does not forbear from is the enforcement of Section 224, which, of course, is the Pole Attachment Act. And part of the analysis in the plan suggests, as you might expect, that allowing folks easier access to poles, ducts, and conduit will make it easier for you to build the nuts and bolts of your network. And that's one of the things that, while I can't go into much detail about it, I think is going to spur a lot of discussion in the WISP community once this plan comes out.
Gotcha. So how long do you think until that plan, once the rules are voted on and How long do you think before we will actually have our first glimpse at this thing? Is this a year down the road, or is it...
Oh, no, definitely not a year. So typically, for the run-of-the-mill thing that we vote on, it'll come out the day of or the day after. This one, though, it's 332 pages long. It's exceptionally complex. I can tell you that it's very likely that I'm going to be dissenting, and the majority would then have a chance to respond to my dissent, and we have a sort of a ping-pong effect back and forth. And that sometimes can take a couple of weeks to work itself out. So I think early to mid-March is most likely for the release of the document.
Gotcha. So once that comes out, then we can actually see what it is. Is there any...
Exactly.
Do you have any idea why, if there's a really good reason, why this, if this is going to affect so many people, why is it not made public?
Well, the chairman of the FCC is the only person who is authorized to disclose this document. He has said he's not going to do that for two reasons. One is the traditional practice of the FCC, which is not to do it, and two, which is to allow the commissioners to deliberate. But in this case, I don't think either rationale holds. For one thing, with respect to the traditional practice, this is anything but your garden variety FCC issue. I mean, I think you've had millions of commenters. You have the president himself weighing in. It obviously involves the internet, which is a pretty fundamental part of our communication system. So if ever we were to make an exception to the rule, I would argue that it's here. Moreover, in terms of that second consideration, I think this cake is pretty much baked. There's not a lot of discussion going on about, one side trying to persuade the other side to change a mind or anything like that. And so I don't really think it's necessary for us to keep this document quiet. And I think, to the contrary, a lot of people are very interested in it from the consumer side, from the industry side, and I think we should be as open and transparent as the internet itself and just get it out there for people to see.
Yeah, but we got the internet. Why don't we use it and make it transparent?
Well, especially to the extent that the plan specifically rejects exemptions for smaller providers like WISPs. I mean, I think that's something that you and your folks deserve to know, instead of having to guess about what's in there.
Well, I find it that a lot of this information is going to, since it hasn't came out, it creates a lot of speculation, as you said, and right now speculation is not a good thing whenever we are thinking of trying to reinvest. So
that's absolutely right, and I think part of the reason why I don't think the American public should have to rely on dueling press conferences or press releases or tweets or whatever is that this all could be avoided if we just put the document out there and then let the people make up their own mind. They can see in black and white what the plan actually is, and I'm pretty confident in my interpretation of it, but I'm willing to let people make up their own decisions.
Sure. Again, getting back into some of the questions that people are asking, actually on our live chat as well, they're more interested in if they do not meet the definition of broadband. So the FCC, you guys have changed the definition of broadband recently. I believe it's 25/3, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And if we don't meet that, so let's say we have an operator that does not meet that definition, do you know if they're going to be excluded from this or not? Or is that outside of what we can say?
What I can say is that the new definition of broadband, which was adopted last month, is selectively applied in this document to make sure that the FCC is able to sweep in providers who are under that benchmark. And so when it comes to WISPs or mobile providers who don't who don't reach that 25 megabit per second threshold, nonetheless, it's considered to be broadband for the purposes of this document. And so, as I warned last month when we adopted that threshold, look, if you're going to adopt it, you'd better be consistent about it, because otherwise you're just you're not giving any certainty to the industry, and you're essentially just making politically motivated decisions based upon what the regulatory impulse of the day is. And unfortunately, in the context of this document, as I read it, folks are deemed broadband providers even if they fall under that threshold.
Okay, so that threshold, there's pluses and minuses to it, but you're still a broadband provider.
Exactly.
Gotcha. What about like a hotspot operator? Hotels, things like that.
Those folks are not included. So hotels, coffee shops, and the like, if they're not considered to be within the scope of these rules.
Okay, then I got one more in the middle of the line there. MDU. So this would be something like a condo complex, 100 units or something like that, and the condo homeowners association provides internet as part of the rent.
I don't know that MDUs are mentioned specifically. I'm trying to remember if they would fit within the definition of a provider. I don't think they would. But I think it seems like they'd be more analogous to a coffee shop. But you know what? I'll have to. Yeah, I don't want to issue a definitive pronouncement on that one. I'll have to go back and read that particular section.
Well, I'm glad.
I'm sorry to reserve judgment on that one.
No, I'm glad I got a question for you that stumps you. I mean, that's a good thing. 332 pages, was it? I mean, that's a lot of information to take in and remember.
Oh, boy, especially when you've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old crawling all over you. It's not easy to focus.
Ooh, yeah, I understand that. I'm actually, less than a month away, so I'm definitely going to understand that here in about a month. So.
You think Title II's owner is sleep well now, my friend. That's all I can say.
Gotcha. Hey, Steve, do you have anything for the commissioner?
Yeah, there's a few questions out here on the chat in particular. So one question is, so are the rules in effect before any court cases are resolved?
That is a great question. So I think I'll double-check the I'll double-check the ordering clauses and the operative language. My recollection is that they are effective, and as are the decisions with respect to forbearance. But nonetheless, obviously, if a court decides to stay the regulations, then they wouldn't be in effect for the duration of that litigation. So. I think the traditional rule is something like 60 days after publication in the Federal Register they would become effective, unless otherwise stayed by the court.
Okay. Uh-huh. So we got say a month or two after the vote before it comes out. Probably within 60 to 90 days of that is whenever it would become effective, unless there is some type of legal or court that says otherwise.
I believe that's the case. And in addition to that, I marked a couple of places through the plan where future rulemakings are teed up, certain decisions that have to be made following the reclassification decision. And one of them, for example, is the Universal Service Fund decision. Another one relates to mobile services. And so there are a few subsequent rulemakings that are going to happen as well. And so you'll have to keep an eye on those in addition to this big one.
Fun. We have a good question. Can you explain a little better the title, Modern Title II?
That is, to me, it's an oxymoron. I think that Title II has a long pedigree, goes back to not just the 1934 Act, but to the 19th century, when it was the core of Title II was based on railroad monopoly regulation, as your folks know. And the notion of modern, I think, is meant to suggest that, we're forbearing from a lot, and so we're just adopting the core Title II provisions of 201, 202, and 208. The first two being essentially just and reasonable charges and practices, 208 being complaints can be filed with the Commission. But if you were able to see the document, you'd see that it goes much, much further than that. It's, I think, something like 15 sections of Title II will apply, and there are some that the FCC forbears from. But moreover, there's all sorts of, beyond Title II itself, if you look at the rules that are going to be adopted, for example, the Internet Conduct Standard, this is beyond, the FCC adopts 3 rules: no blocking, no throttling, and transparency. Beyond that, it adopts this catch-all Internet Conduct Standard. And when it discusses that standard, it sweeps in everything from particular business practices to service plans like T-Mobile's Music Freedom. And it's not inconceivable that the FCC could target a WISP's particular kind of service plan, say a certain amount of bandwidth for a lower price, and say that's unreasonable, that people should be able to have unlimited access to the Internet. It's not inconceivable at all. And so I think even beyond the core Title II provisions, how those provisions are applied, it's going to create a nightmare for a lot of WISPs to comply with.
Very, very difficult. A lot of reporting and a lot of things that hopefully we won't know. We may or may not be privy to until that comes out.
Right.
Gotcha. And is there any type of core, small business exemptions or anything like that? You probably can't go into that until it comes out.
No, not really. I mean, as I said, unfortunately, there's a rejection of the exemption because, essentially, internet service is internet service, and that's too bad because, as you probably know, the Obama administration's own Small Business Administration last year specifically told the FCC to be careful about the impact of these rules on small businesses. And I've been pretty outspoken about the fact that Title II is going to fall disproportionately on the shoulders of WISPs and other smaller providers who are supplying that option to the bigger incumbents that the people seem to want.
Yeah. Bravo, Commissioner Pai. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I think a lot of people, when they hear the acronym ISP, they immediately think of a mega corporation with global reach, which has millions and millions of subscribers and billions of dollars in market capitalization. And, I always come back to the example of my own parents who are WISP customers, and they're really happy with their service, and they appreciate the grit and the determination it made for that service to be put in place. And that's not something that I take for granted at all. These networks don't have to exist, and WISPs don't have to take the risk, and consumers are better off because they do.
Gotcha. We do have another question specifically to the municipal broadband stuff. Where do you fall on municipal broadband projects and the exemption of the statewide laws?
On that one, I view this putting on my legal hat, and as I look at the law, I don't see a clear statement from Congress that it intended to give the FCC the authority to preempt state laws restricting municipal broadband. Regardless of the merit of a particular municipal broadband project, I think the law seems to be pretty clear that, especially under Section 706, there's no clear statement from Congress, and especially in light of some of the older cases like Nixon versus Missouri Municipal League back in 2004, I think it's going to be an uphill battle for the FCC to persuade a court that it has the authority to do this.
Okay. I know you have limited amount of time, so just let us know when you're about there. Another question kind of goes back to a conversation we were actually having, me and Steve, prior to you coming in on the show today. And that was specifically that we have a lot of providers that what they do is they use various means, hardware boxes, whatever, software, it doesn't matter, to give the appearance or to help give the perception to the ISP customer of a fast internet connection. And I'll use the example of you're downloading something in the background. Okay, you're downloading your iTunes update or whatever it may be, but yet you want to surf and Skype with grandma. And in many cases, a lot of providers will sit there and see that there's two different flows of data, and one is considered a download, it's non-interactive, and the other one is very interactive. So what they'll do is they will prioritize those packets ahead of the data for Skype call ahead of the data for the download. Now, when we look at the Title II regulation, I understand it's not wholly enforceable, or it's not wholly purpose is to get to net neutrality, but that's how we're going to get there. When we look at pure net neutrality, that type of prioritization is basically a big fat no-no. Is that what the goal of the FCC is to get the Title II so that they have the authority to set the net neutrality standards?
Well, I think that's part of the problem is the plan puts the camel's nose under the tent, and it starts to inject the FCC into that kind of decision making. And I think this is a good example of an area where we aren't well positioned to make that kind of determination. I mean, I think if a particular WISP decides that it just needs to prioritize certain kinds of traffic in certain ways, there are entirely pro-competitive reasons for them to do that, and I don't think they should have to think about shouldn't have to incorporate into the decision-making process a risk assessment of a regulator stepping in either in real time or after the fact and saying that it's a net neutrality violation. I think that they should make that decision based on what's best for their consumers, and that's yet another reason why I don't think it's a good idea for us to adopt this plan.
Sure. I just can imagine the amount of money that the ISP industry as a whole has spent on those types of solutions, because they do give a perception that the internet is, quote, faster. It just shifts data around to the data that you're wanting to get quicker.
Right.
And I just can see that is just going to be a big ugly thing in the background on net neutrality as well. So let's see here. We do have another question here asking about the Regulatory Flexibility Act during the proceeding process.
Yes. That is going to be another important part of this. There is a discussion of, I don't know how much your folks know about the Regulatory Flexibility Act, but essentially it requires us to make an assessment of the impact our rules would have on small businesses. And depending on how robust or not the FCC's analysis is, people can challenge that determination and say, look, these regulations are too burdensome. Similar thing with the Paperwork Reduction Act, to the extent we're requiring you to do certain things or produce certain information. And I think that's going to be another wrinkle to the regulatory puzzle that folks might end up pursuing. It's what I can say about the plan is I disagree with its assessment of the impact on small businesses. I think that the impact is going to be tremendous, and whether or not it constitutes a Regulatory Flexibility Act violation or not, I guess someone smarter than me will have to decide. But nonetheless, I do think it's an important aspect of the problem.
Gotcha. I do understand. Steve, you said you had another question, or did we get that one?
No, you got it. It was I wanted to just have Commissioner Pai address net neutrality, and you nailed it.
Beautiful.
Oh, great!
I like it when we get all the questions, we get them all answered and such. Oh, let's see here. What else do we have? Do you have anything else that you think we really need to know about, especially timetables, things that we really should be? Do you really think that as a small ISP, let's say again under 15 people, do you really think that this is going to, in the next, let's say, year, considerably drive your business decisions during the next year? In other words, you're always going to have something in the back of your head.
Boy, that is a good question. I mean, I certainly don't want to put myself in the shoes of the hardworking folks who are making payroll, signing off on risky decisions every single day. But I can simply say that from my vantage point, trying to think about how these regulations would affect your businesses, it's going to require a fair amount of time and effort to make sure that your networks are configured, that your services are structured in such a way as to not run afoul of these rules. I mean, I think that there's a lot of discussion about Title II being a well-established, set of rules that everybody understands. That might be true for some of the bigger providers like the telephone companies, but I think the Title II rules overall are so onerous, especially for smaller providers, that your folks unfortunately are going to have a heck of a time trying to adjust to them. And I stand ready and willing to help in any way I can. Even if it's just you're trying to make sure that your story is told here at the agency, but by and large, it's not going to be an easy road to hoe over the next year, I'm afraid, and beyond.
So we're going to expect that as we expand and as we continue on, most small providers are going to have to at least have something in the back, in the shirt pocket per se, something to say, hey, this is happening. We need to make sure that we're in compliance. And it's going to be not necessarily a burden, but it's definitely going to be something that we're going to have to keep in our minds as we continue on.
Absolutely, and I can't emphasize this enough that I really do take my job seriously in terms of being accountable and responsive as possible to people who are affected by our decisions. And as folks in the WISP community hopefully know by now, I really value their contribution to the American broadband landscape. And so, stay in touch, whether it's email, ajit.pai@fcc.gov, whether it's Twitter @AjitPaiFCC, or just calling me up on the phone to let me know of the problems you're facing, of the possibilities that you've got to forego because of these regulations. It's important for your story to be heard, and here at the agency and throughout the country.
Gotcha. Well, first off, I really do appreciate you coming on. I know we've had a lot of really good questions. I know we got one question that was really difficult. I like those. It's no good if you know all the answers. I mean, you have to be challenged at least a little bit.
No, I was sweating under the collar there as I was getting flashbacks to school when the professor would call on me. So it was a nice throwback.
Excellent.
Commissioner Pai, I have a question for you.
Okay.
So this vote goes down on the 26th, correct?
That's right.
So whether it passes or not, because it sounds like you're not for it, will the document then be released so that we can all see how we're going to be affected? And if you dissent, is there the volleyball back and forth to try to convince you that it's good?
So the vote is going to be held on the 26th. At that point, the document theoretically could be released any time, but as a practical matter, what will happen is that I'll post my dissent internally, and then the majority will have a chance to respond to it, then I'll have a chance to respond to the majority, and we'll have that volleyball thing. And I would expect that might take up to a couple of weeks, just guessing, because this document is really long and complicated, and the arguments are complicated too. And so it might be a few weeks before, say early to mid-March, before we get to see, or the public gets to see the document.
Okay. One of the other questions from our listeners is, what happens to the quiet period? Is that when you read all the comments listed before yesterday?
Yes. Yeah. So, excuse me. We're in the quiet period right now, and when we're not allowed to take any further comments from the public, and we have to go based on the record that's been compiled as of midnight last night.
Beautiful. Well, Commissioner, I think we got all of the questions answered. I'm sorry, I got one more. Do you have time for one more?
I think I do have time for one quick one. Yeah, that's okay.
I'm just going to read this one because it's kind of long and see where we go. It says, most of the telco regulations for that industry have been reasonable since they had received government money, much like the broadcast industry is under heavy control. ISPs were mostly developed on private funds, so they weren't developed in the government funding. Is the FCC imposing eminent domain by making them a utility without compensation?
The plan does contain a discussion of the constitutional issues involved, and one component of that is what we call takings, and the use of eminent domain is an example of that. And I think that's going to be something that folks are going to litigate. There's no doubt about it. And I think it's part of the reason why it's in the defense, the preemptive defense is in the plan, is because you could make the argument that these regulations are so far-reaching that it constitutes the government essentially taking your property without just compensation. And so, I'm not sure how the merits of any particular argument along those lines would be decided by a court, but I don't doubt that there are folks out there who are going to make it.
Gotcha. So you're saying the documents do pertain to that, have some documentation in that, so it is a forethought in the plan, but in all reality, all that's going to come down to the courts probably anyway.
I think so, yeah. I think the plan includes a defense to that argument, and we'll see what the court ends up doing with it.
Beautiful. Well, Commissioner Pai, thank you very much for coming on today. I also wanted to thank you for speaking at, Wispapalooza last year. Great speech.
It was great. I enjoyed it a lot.
Great speech, and it was a really good time. It was a really good industry event for us as well. So I very much thank you for being on the show. Steve, last words.
Yeah, Commissioner Pai, I really want to thank you for being a champion of the small business. I run my own WISP here in New Mexico, and I'm scared, but I really appreciate you sticking up for me. That it's powerful to me.
Well, I appreciate that, and the silver lining to all of this is that once February 26th is over, hopefully the agency, if I have anything to say about it, is going to focus on things that help you do your job better. Getting more 5 gigahertz spectrum out there, making it easier to deploy infrastructure, ultimately providing better service to your customers, and that's what you guys are all about. And our mission is to help you make those decisions in a pro-competitive way.
Really, really appreciate it. Again, we thank you for your time. And hopefully we could get you back on the show in the near future.
That would be great. Thanks much.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Dennis, you want to any final thoughts and wrap it up?
Yeah, I think everything, lots of great information. Commissioner, thank you again. With that said, we'll wrap up the show, and I hope everybody has a little bit more insight into what the FCC is doing. I am really looking forward to seeing the actual document, because based on what I hear is, there's goods and bads, but it sounds like until we get the whole document, no one knows anything, and everybody's speculating. My recommendation is to go ahead and keep doing business as usual until that document comes out, because then you will have information to actually make an informed decision. Otherwise, you're just going to be shortchanging yourself. It may come out and everything's going to be fine, and now you've wasted however many months of not building out because of the uncertainty. So if we could continue building out, hey, that's great. If not, it is what it is. But until we get some hard data, everything's up in the air. So with that said, we will let everybody go. Thank you very much for listening in, and we hope to see you all not next week. Next week we will be at the WISP America show, but the following week we will have a WISP America recap. Again, that's on Wednesday, 11 a.m. Central is our normal time. So, ladies and gentlemen, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to ISP Radio. We hope you've gained new insights and additional wisdom in our industry as well as your business. Please remember to visit our show sponsors via the links on ispradio.com. If you're interested in becoming a show sponsor, contact us at sales@ispradio.com. Now go out there and push those packets as fast as you can. Good luck and Godspeed.